I really should have started to share my work way earlier on.
How do you go about planning your photo shoots and the things that you want to photograph?
I took my camera everywhere with me for years, but I didn't post them. It only took a push from my wife to get me to start posting.
I think it's never too early or too late to start whatever you like.
Can I ask you about editing?
So I basically put together like a video reel showing like that moment of me walking backwards on the escalator and then showing the picture. And then it ended up going viral. So the mindset really is, I'm going to show up and I'm going to see what unfolds around me, and then I'll try to capture that in the best light possible.
Chris, growing up in Canada and later moving to Miami, how did your environment shape your perspective as a photographer?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Ottawa, if anyone is familiar with Ottawa, it's up in Canada, of course. A lot of stillness, a lot of nature, I think, comes from there. And, moving down to Miami, eventually, Miami's very different. It's about vibrant scenes, a little bit louder, not as quiet. And I kind of like the contrast of the two kind of combined together. And I think a lot of that has probably shaped a lot of the work that I've done, just based off of the fact that, I can find art in still scenes, but also art in a little bit more vibrant scenes as well. And that's kind of what culture is, right? It's a little bit of the juxtaposition of both together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Miami has a really particular culture, I think.
Vibe. It's a vibe.
Yes, absolutely. You have also studied abroad in Sweden. Do you think that had an impact on who you are today as a visual storyteller?
Yeah, 100%. So when I studied abroad in Sweden, that was the first time I actually went away from home. Like I moved out of my home with my parents and went somewhere brand new. And I purposely wanted to try to find a place that was different enough where I can experience a different culture. And honestly, I didn't really know what to expect. I want to say I was probably 20 years old at the time when I did that. And it really shaped just my understanding of the world. And I always tell everybody this when they talk about travel, is I really feel like travel is such an important piece of somebody's upbringing, and it really gives you an appreciation for what else is out there within the world. I was just talking to my wife the other day because our daughter was just born, and we want her to be able to travel as much as possible very early on. That's one of the things that we'll be doing even before she's probably 1 year old, is we're already going to be taking her to Mexico and then to Brazil. There's different places like that, because I really do feel like that teaches somebody an appreciation for other cultures, other people. And then I think, just as being a visual storyteller, I like to be able to bring those stories to life and to share them with other people too, because that's one thing that being a photographer is all about, is sharing the emotions and the scenes that you've seen and hoping other people can resonate with it too. I think Ronald has his hand up. Yeah.
So you lived in many places, many different places. You were born in a place which is maybe one of the coldest you can live for a long time. But which is the place you would say influenced you most in the way you try to tell your stories now?
And you're talking about places I specifically lived, or places that I visited?
Oh no, in general.
Yeah.
Visiting, living, I just say you lived and stayed at so many places. But what kind of place is maybe the place which influenced you most in your journey?
I think it was probably my first time to Japan. That was sort of that big trip and back then I wasn't even a photographer. I want to say it was the year 2012 is when I first went to Japan. And I'm not sure if either of you have been to Japan before, but it's almost like it's an explosion of culture in a way that is not necessarily seen anywhere else. It's an ancient culture too, so there's just a lot of story to tell behind it, versus what we see in Canada. Canada is actually like a relatively young country. That's what a lot of people don't understand as much, is that there is beautiful history behind it, but when you go to somewhere like Japan that has rich cultural ancient history and you get to see that come to life, I think that has really shaped my understanding and my want to tell those stories, or to capture them even. I remember I only had my cell phone at the time. I downloaded some silly Instagram like app that with a bunch of filters, and I was taking a lot of photos, and I remember I was like, this is actually really fun. This is something that I want to do a little bit more frequently. And then I think that kind of started to get my gears running in terms of wanting to explore and capture other places.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
I wanted to link that a little bit to some of your award-winning images. Now that we jump into Japan and Vietnam, for sure it must have a different culture. But do you think that those places, because they are way different from the US, because the culture is so different, do you think that you find more inspiration there in general in these just places that are different, right?
Yeah. I think that's what it is. It's places that are entirely different, and it's funny because if you go to anyone in Vietnam, they'll be like, "Oh, that's pretty normal," like it's a normal scene to them. But there's such a contrast between where I was in Canada, where I am from Miami, especially, versus Vietnam. I think that's definitely something that really just pulls that inspiration out even more. I have a want to be able to tell cultural stories. That's like my thing, and I think the thing that I gravitate the most to, and the reason why like I felt so strongly about that photo series from Vietnam is because it's almost like it's capturing old ancient cultures and traditions that are still happening today, and I love just that contrast of being able to see those still being employed today, still coming to life today, because we're in a world that is very different over in Miami and in Canada. And I think Vietnam and Japan, it's just they've got this way of preserving those old traditions probably a lot better than a lot of other places that I've been to.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that too. And is there a habit or a mindset, photography mindset, that you carry to all these places? Something that makes you be a better creative?
Yeah, I think the biggest mindset that I have is to just go with an open mind and let scenes unfold in front of me. I think that's probably one of the most important pieces is I don't want to force any scene, any of that type of stuff. So the mindset really is I'm going to show up and I'm going to see what kind of unfolds around me, and then I'll try to capture that in the best light possible. And one thing in my mind is I want every single piece that I capture, or at least show, to look like a piece of standalone art on its own. So I really, I'll try to let a scene unfold in front of me, but really kind of focus in on exactly what I'm trying to capture. Is it the subject? Is it the story behind exactly what's happening within the photo? I think there's a lot of that probably goes and runs through my mind, and that's probably sort of what comes about when I do show my work.
I find that interesting, because this kind of connects with another question I have in mind when I think about those topics. I just show up somewhere. So how do you deal with your gear? Do you have the full set with you always? Do you have something you really appreciate? What is your go-to toolkit? So how do you deal with it? Do you have the full kit with you, or is it more selective on where you're going to?
Yeah, you should talk to my wife, because she always complains that I pack way too much whenever we're going anywhere, and I'll use maybe not even half the gear that I bring with me. And I'm starting to mature and get a lot better at that, I think. At the beginning, I'm a gear nut. That's the thing too, is that I just love cameras. I love gear. I love looking at new lenses and getting new lenses, trying them out, etc. And I think I've learned to pack a little bit lighter for certain types of occasions. Like, so for example, probably my go-to is just my Canon R5. I'll probably have a 35 millimeter, a 24 to 70, and then maybe a 70 to 200 if I feel like there's going to be some shots that I need a telephoto lens. That's kind of like my main go-to. But now, more frequently now, I've started to pack my drone with me too. Luckily, DJI makes the Mini Pro, so it's pretty easy to transport around with me everywhere. But I got to tell you, and I travel a lot for work too, and I always pack at least my 24 to 70 and my Canon R5 and my Mini 4 Pro, and sometimes I don't take out either, and it just kind of happens that way. So I think it's a thing where I think in the future, I'm hoping that all these cameras and these lenses and things get smaller, so that I can feel like I've got the breadth of what I need whenever I'm traveling. I think every photographer is a little different, but I know a lot of photographers that always have trouble trying to figure out what to pack because they want to bring everything with them.
What about you, Ronald?
Yeah, what about you?
My gear set? Normally, I think we are limited in what we can carry. And for me at the moment, it's a combination of a 16 to 35 millimeter and the 50 to 150, which is kind of the go-to combination, but what's always in my set is a drone. So
yeah,
most likely 2 drones for the mindset.
Which drone are you using right now?
Right now, the Mavic 4 Pro is my main go-to drone, but also a Mini 4, or 5 now. Always depending on where you go to, what kind of drone is allowed to fly there. So, yeah, our world is full of regulations for flying drones.
Yeah, that's true too. I've been trying to get around that as well, or trying to understand that a little bit more. Luckily in places like Vietnam, the laws are a lot more relaxed, but in the US here, it's very hard to fly your drone around anywhere because there's always some kind of regulation for good reason as well. I mean, there's a lot of low flying planes and things like that you got to take into account. But yeah, I think that's interesting, and I know that flying drones in the US it's even more complicated now. Even just getting the Mavic 4 Pro hasn't even been easy here in the US. It's not even available, at least the last I checked. So it's stuff like that you guys are a little bit more lucky over the pond there in Europe.
That makes a lot of difference, I think. Just having the bird eye perspective and the award-winning photos that you capture in Vietnam, those mostly, I think one of them was with a drone, could be, and the other one, which is in the fields, was just like from the ground.
Yeah, there's a few. So I got a series called Traditions from Above, which is all shot on my drone. And the idea behind that was, trying to show a bird's eye view with traditional workers working in their conical hats. Like that was kind of the piece to it. And I noticed that there's a really interesting composition when you view those from above. But then as well, I use my Canon R5 for some of my other shots. There's that other one that I have in the fields there that's kind of like a straight on shot of these women working in the tea plantations. That one as well. Was done on my camera.
Yeah, those are amazing, and they perform.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. I feel like just some images can kind of speak to you, and those in particular. Also, when we had the opportunity to share a little bit of your path with the nomadic community, people resonated a lot with those images and your story. So. I'm always curious, like why some images just make you feel something, and other images just are like, just another photo more. In your opinion, what makes those award-winning images successful? Like, there are some specific characteristics that you can identify, or it's just maybe luck?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a little bit of both. Like you're only given what the scene gives you in a lot of cases. And I think, what makes it, stand out or and I think your question is sort of around like what makes it emotional, etc., is the piece that kind of speaks to me the most. And I don't know if there is like a proper formula for any of that type of stuff. The way I approach it though is I want somebody to really want to know more about that photo when they look at it. So don't take it at face value. There's a lot more to be told in that photo the longer that you look at it. And it is a little bit hard to explain, but it's something that goes through my mind when I'm actually editing or creating something is, I know what I saw, and I want to try the best possible way to get other people to feel what I saw as well, but then also have them wanting more, to understand exactly and asking the questions as to like what is going on in there. Like I think that's the piece that speaks to me the most when I'm creating my images, is I want that story to be told as much as possible. I want it to be a standalone piece that can tell a story and make you feel what I felt when I took that photo, essentially.
Absolutely. Taking as an example that series or one of those images, is there a strategy that you normally follow in order to capture such moments. Are there specific actions that you do consistently when you're approaching perhaps somebody that is just doing his or her thing? Any specific strategies that you could share with people that would like to try something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also depends on the place that you're in, right? And if you're talking about traditional street photography, there's not much of in a lot of cases, a lot of interaction if people are kind of going about their day. Like I would say, employing like a longer lens, for example. Like I also like to carry an 85 millimeter with me around just in case, I don't want to get too close and also don't want to stand out too much by shoving a camera in somebody's face. So I'll stand a little bit farther back and try to capture a moment that way. I would say certain places like Vietnam was interesting because I was there with a group of people, and as we were kind of going around, when we did see somebody doing something interesting, it's respectful to ask them, hey, is it okay if I take a photo of you while you're doing, you're going about your day, etc. In Vietnam as well, I mean, it's nice, for example, hey, like, can I tip you a little bit of dollars so I'm not bugging you or anything, and then it's okay if I'm around you taking photos, capturing what you're doing. I think that's the right way of doing it, really. It's not to fully be surprising or spying on people by any means. I think that's how I try to do it. Is like I try to be a little bit more respectful upfront with it. At least in Asia, that's worked very well. I would say I don't really do that as much in places like in Europe. In Europe, I'm probably a little bit more like a classic street photographer where I'll step back a little bit with a longer lens and just kind of capture moments as they're happening.
Absolutely. And for the story itself, it's, I guess, just a matter of waiting for the right moment, lighting. But I'm really curious, like those are components that we all think about.
Yeah.
In your case, now also traveling perhaps with a baby, how do you go about planning your photo shoots and the things that you want to photograph? Do you also have a structure for that? Or you just rather rely on the places that you want to visit, and depending on the weather, you go to one place or the other and just chase the light, chase the moment? And yeah, so I guess my question is, how flexible are you with preparation?
Yeah. And me being a guy that, like, I love actually to prepare, but it's really hard to prepare in a lot of cases for things unless I for example, if I'm doing a dedicated photography trip, I'll do all the preparation. I'll do all the research ahead of time, finding, interesting spots that I think are going to work well. Even looking down to what time the light comes out in certain places the most, where the sun is setting, etc. Like I'll look into all of that and try to plan it out ahead of time. Now, having to learn to travel with a baby, I'll let you know. We haven't traveled with our baby just yet, but that's going to be a really interesting experience. We're going to go to Mexico in December, so that's going to be one where I'm going to have to figure out how to balance the two together, right? But I would say, like in general, there's I'll try to plan out things as much as I possibly can, but the flexibility is something that every photographer needs to have. The lighting is never going to be absolutely perfect 100% of the time. You just need to be prepared. And also, it helps you develop as a photographer shooting in different lighting conditions and everything like that, because it'll just make you a better photographer. You'll learn how to use your settings better. You'll learn how to expose an image better as well. I learned that pretty early on when I was a concert photographer back in the day. That's how I started photography. And going into that, really what they said was the rule for concert photography is always you get to shoot the first 3 songs of a band as they're playing, and then that's it. I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't know exactly where they're going to place me. And I don't know what the lighting is going to be like at all. If you go to concerts, the lights are flashing in different places, and you just got to kind of be ready and prepared for anything. And that trained me pretty early on to say, hey, like, find the moment as it's kind of happening, and you just need to kind of adapt as quick as possible. So I think that's every photographer probably needs to be as flexible as possible, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And you mentioned shortly a little bit about your beginning as a photographer, shooting for bands. Looking back to all these years photographing, what is one personal failure that taught you more than a success? Something that really worked ever did?
And this is a really interesting question. I mean, like, I'm chock full of failures, obviously. Everybody is, and you try to learn from them as much as possible. And I think probably if I had to single it down to one specifically from my photography career, is that I really should have started to share my work way earlier on. I really only started to seriously share my work about two and a half years ago. I really should have started earlier than that. And I think that was more of a personal hump I needed to get over as an artist. Like I'm not sure if it's the same for you, Alejandro, or Ronald as well for you. My work is very personal to me. And I think as like back in the day, I took my camera everywhere with me for years, but I didn't post them ever. And the reason behind that is just it's such a personal piece for me of like what I think is beautiful, what I think is art. I was afraid of what other people would think as well, and I think we all get into this comparison thing where we compare ourselves to other artists, other photographers or filmmakers on social media, and it makes you feel like, oh, like I'm not sure if I'm good enough, etc. And it only took a push from my wife to get me to start posting, and it was actually the second time I went to Japan. I went with my wife, and it, like once again, I'm taking photos all day long, and she was kind of like, you literally, you take thousands of photos and then nothing gets posted. And then it just so happened we were in Osaka, and I took a photo of the escalator inside the Umeda Sky building. And she ended up taking a video. I didn't even know she was taking a video. She took a video of me from behind, and I was walking backwards on the escalator, one hand with a water bottle, and like I just had like my camera kind of going, and then and then I showed the picture afterwards. So I basically put together like a video reel showing like that moment of me walking backwards on the escalator and then showing the picture. And then it ended up going viral. She encouraged me just to post it, and thank God she did, because otherwise I wouldn't have realized that people appreciated my work as much. And it did give me some confidence later on. But I think when you just think back to it, I just wish I had the confidence earlier on in my career. Because who knows where I could be in terms of building out this photography career, is that I could have been probably farther along. But it was really just getting over that initial hump of myself trying to get the confidence to do it. And I realized that this is actually something that a lot of creators and photographers go through. I've posted about this probably a few times now on my page, and I kind of share my story about building the confidence to show and share my work. And a lot of people resonate with it. It just seems like a lot of people kind of like realize that that's actually something that they're going through as well. It's really hard to have your work judged, really, is what it is, because if your photography and art is so personal, it's literally down to yourself, what you think looks nice, and you don't want anyone else to tell you that otherwise. Is kind of what it is.
So when you started posting more often on social media, did you feel ready in a way? Like, I think my photography work is ready to be presented to as many people as possible, or it was just okay, let's give it a try, this reel went well, why not keep posting?
For me, no, I didn't feel ready at all. And to be honest with you, even today, sometimes I'm not sure if I'm there yet. Like, my photography is always evolving. And if you look back just my photography from 2.5 years ago, mind you, I've been a photographer for like 15 years. And the photography I posted 2.5 years ago actually looks very different from the stuff I'm posting now. And I'm like slowly evolving what I'm sharing as I go on. And I think this is just something that is going to take me some time. And I think it's just something that every photographer goes through. It's whether you're ready or not. I don't think any artist should feel like they're already there, like they have already mastered it. And that's it. Because for me, it's the process and the journey that makes it fun, is that I'm continuously feeling like I'm evolving my work, and it's getting to a place that's closer to where it's meant to be. Whether I actually ever get there is a question. I like to think that I'm always going to evolve forever, because I think that's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. And Ronald, if I may ask too, I know a little bit about your story, Ronald, and how you started on social media, but I think that linking this to Chris' path could be also interesting. Personally, I would love to know also from your side, Ronald, how you felt the first time you were sharing on social media. In looking to your work, when I found it, Ronald, I was already really amazed, but by what you were sharing. Is that a thought that you had as well, or you were just like, I think I have curated my craft for many years, so I want to share it now and just see what happens. And is that something that people should think about when they want to become like a creator or kind of photographer and use social media as a marketing tool?
I think it's never too early or too late to start whatever you like. Many people nowadays always complain about that they are too late to start whatever they are interested in, and they should start what they like and proceed with that. And when they can transport their feeling about their work in their work, other people will appreciate that. And this will help them to grow in the way they may not think about it yet. And this may be photography, but this is true for every other topic. Many say, okay, I'm too late for opening whatever, because someone else had already the idea to open it. But that's simply not true. It will be your thing, your style, your work, your passion you can bring into it, and it will be different. And if people will like it or not, that will be maybe interesting for making a career out of it. But it's never too late to try. And for some people, and that's more like what my case is, or my background is, it's just about time. The amount of time you have to do something, to share, for example, your work. When you're like me, working in that industry for, more than 20 years now. And I'm coming from the film or video side of the story. So I'm working as a professional cameraman. For me, it was a new way to share my work to another audience. And for me, it was more the time, which struggled, or still struggling me most, to keep going with it.
I like that.
But never too late, and start as early as you can.
I think that's really good advice too. I think you're right. I mean, a lot of people probably think, oh, it's too late for me, etc. There's it's a lot of like other people are already kind of hopping on board. Like, what am I going to share that's so different from everybody else? I think it's important for people to realize that art is unique in the sense that there's so many different things that you can share that other people could appreciate too. And I think that's something that like a lot of people need to get over.
And in the end, it's your style, your vision of it. I mean, it's also about places to go and to visit. Many people complain about those classic spots we have in the world. But if you go there and do your thing there, it will be your shot and your vision and your moment you produce. I don't think that we have to complain too much about seeing things again, because we're kind of
absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why those classic spots are so beautiful, and people want to witness it on their own. Like, and I'll be honest, like my Vietnam photos there's a lot of people that have visited those places that I've taken photos of, and I see it popping up all over on my feed now. And every single time I appreciate what somebody's captured, because it always looks a little bit different. It's always from a different angle. It's always very unique. And I love that. I think it's something that people need to realize. That's something where I think also social media makes it interesting for a photographer, because you're always comparing against others, and you can see that, if you want to stand out, you feel like you need to do something different all the time. Yes, to an extent, but I think just you capturing something is already your different take on it. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think from my perspective, what makes both of your paths interesting is that you guys were shooting for many years ago, like over a decade, both of you, and then you decided to start posting on social media. I will be curious for someone that is looking to start, like someone that is young and just gets really hooked into photography, what that path will look like for him. Because in his case or her case, it will be just starting from scratch, learning about photography, editing. Would you still recommend this person that is starting to post on social media?
So for me personally, absolutely. I think it's something that, once again, for me, it took a long time for me to get over this thought of having my work critiqued from other people. And I think the faster you can get over that, the faster. And if you want to build a career as a photographer, you need to be able to share your work. Like, I think that's really important. So start posting it immediately. And it's more about, one, you can get great, positive critique from people to better your craft as you go. Like, I think that's also important, is just kind of having other people look at your work and finding what they do appreciate in, and then you understanding what you can improve on. I mean, it's a constant improvement process, right? You're never going to be perfect right off the beginning. And best advice for anyone starting out in photography is for them just to know that you can't be perfect right off the bat, and don't expect to be. You need to be able to just evolve and be flexible, once again, as necessary. That's what a photographer is you need to be flexible, and you need to understand that things change, and you need to be sort of better what you do.
That's very interesting, because many doing photography, when you look how they deal or do photography, even at places where it's absolutely not necessary, people are going there, setting up their tripod, putting their camera on it, and taking like 1,500 pictures from the same angle with their camera, without all those things you just mentioned, and try to be kind of a photographer. I don't think that this is nowadays the right approach to be a photographer. So the part of flexibility, you said, and it doesn't matter what gear you have, go with your iPhone, but try to find, even at all those places you can go to, and even if it's a classical and the most famous spot in the world, try to find something new, a new perspective on it, something you don't see in the first moment when you enter the room, because it's even worse when you see those photographers with those tripods. In which height do they place their camera? It's like normal eye level. It's what everyone attending that scenery sees. And I think that's also part of that flexibility, find something new and interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Ronald. And it's also, I think you're right. You need to, if you want to go into a place, it's starting to train your eye to try to find something new. That will set you apart from anyone else that is trying photography as well. You're right, it's finding those new angles, trying to be a little bit different in that sense.
Yeah, also be flexible with everything. Timing, stand up early, go out late. Don't hesitate when it's raining. You can always get some good shots, and even if you had the perfect sun moment, maybe just wait another 50 minutes. Maybe something is coming up which you didn't expect first. Don't give up too early. That's like, don't give up too early while posting, but also don't give up too early in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something about, take your, whatever you have, use your iPhone, whatever it is. I think that's also something that's important, is that a lot of people think that, I want to start out as a photographer, but I can't afford a camera. I get that so often. And I'll tell you, actually, so when I started as a concert photographer, I thought that I could do it with just my iPhone, believe it or not, at the beginning. And that's kind of like what I did, was to build my portfolio before I actually started to get real gigs as a concert photographer. I would go to concerts with my iPhone and try to get the best photos I possibly could. And that's like actually what I put out as my portfolio at the beginning. And then I slowly built up to like buying my first camera, etc. But it's just the best camera you have is the one that you have, essentially, is the one that you can afford. And don't let gear hold you back from starting it out. Like, iPhones are so good now. Like Ronald, I saw you were showing that you just had the new iPhone. I noticed the orange one there. The cameras are so good on these things now, like compared to the Canon Rebel T2i or whatever it was that I had back in 2012. I think the iPhone is probably better than that camera today. So it's like, and I was shooting concerts on that camera back then. So just imagine that. It's a big difference now.
Way better. I think, to be honest, maybe not only in the iPhone, also from other manufacturers who are doing now smartphones, the technology they have inside there is way beyond what we have like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago in professional cameras. So I think you really can do a lot of it. And as I said before, I think it's not about the gear only, it's about what you do with it. And I had once a workshop where we had other photographers with normal cameras, and one guy has just this iPhone with him. And this guy was the most creative guy I ever had with me in a workshop, because he was jumping around all the time, searching for new angles, doing all with his iPhone, don't complain about gear. He just did it.
That's actually true. And like kind of like going back to, you know, like what gear do I bring around? And I know a lot of photographers like to bring all their gear around with them. But you're right though, in the sense when you're subjected to just having one piece of gear, whether it's an iPhone or one lens, etc., it forces you and your mind to try to find those angles and those different perspectives, because you're limited by what you're using. And I think that's actually a good way of training yourself as a new photographer too. I think that's something that that they should probably think about.
If I look at my gallery, I would say like 60% of all photos are shot with 35 millimeter.
And there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's true.
That's my go-to lens.
And me too, actually. So I think the 35 is probably the one that I carry around with me the most. It used to be a 24-70, but I've been loving my 35. I just like the fact that, you know, I don't need to worry about zooming in and out. I really need to just like force myself to find that composition with what I'm given.
I wanted to ask both of you guys, what will be a good time for someone to invest heavily in gear?
That is an interesting one. I don't know what you think, Ronald.
I think the most interesting part about that is in what kind of gear do you invest?
Yeah.
At which time? And I think what now is again worth to invest in is like lenses and glass. Camera bodies you can switch them out like every other year or every 2 years. There's coming out something different. I think the lenses make the difference, and you should have a kind of lens setup which is matching your style of photography.
Yeah.
And for that you maybe also have to try to find what is your gear. Maybe go and buy some used stuff first to find out if those glasses are the ones and the focal lengths are the ones you really appreciate. And if you found out what you like, you can start to invest more in it. Because if you have a lens you really like and it's a good lens, you will or could keep it for several years and take it with you on the new body and work with it again. And it will still be your lens and your kind of supporting style. And I think also the lens selection or the focal length selection is kind of part of what makes your style. Because you have photographers out there who work a lot with compression. You have others out there who do a lot on the wide angle side.
Yeah.
And this is part of your style, and the journey to find it is to work on it, do experiments with it. And I would say before you invest too much, try. And maybe you start trying with the phone, and then you invest in a first lens and a first camera. Maybe you get a good used one. I think there are deals out there which give you like certificated used gear, which is maybe better than from the street.
Yeah.
Maybe you know some photographers who can give you an idea or can sell you all the stuff you can work with. And I think then it's a question of what do you get in return for it. I mean, if money doesn't matter, you can invest any time, but if money matters, maybe you can start to invest if you get something out of it. And then find kind of a balance. Don't over-invest.
Yeah,
many people will not see. Sorry, one last idea. Many people will not see a difference if you post a Mini 5 Pro photo or 4 Pro or 3 Pro or Mavic 4 Pro or Inspire picture. That doesn't matter. It's a different kind of tool, and you have different options to get a picture. But for the final result, often people will not see the difference with which gear it was done.
Yeah. I really, really like what you said there. And, you know, like now when I think back to it as well, like spend the money and really invest later on once you really understand the type of stuff you want to shoot. And I like what you were saying, Ronald, about you can go and you can buy something used to try it out at the beginning. You need to figure out exactly what you love to shoot. Like I know people that only like macro photography, but it took them a while to get to just shooting macro photography. Like they didn't realize they liked it so much until they did it after a while. And you can find camera gear that's so cheap now, and it's great gear still. Like I'll be honest, up until 2 years ago, I had a 5D Mark III, which I got back in, I think it was like 2014. And I used that thing for 10 years essentially. And that camera today, you can probably buy that camera for $300 US today. It's, in comparison to how much these things, like a Canon R5 is, it's very, very minuscule. But, and you can also buy cheap lenses, used lenses online as well from different people. And that camera is amazing. Like, I would say, even if you take a look at my feed, probably over half of my feed is actually still the Canon 5D Mark III photos. And nobody would tell the difference whatsoever. It's a great way to just kind of like jump in early. People don't realize that they don't need like the best gear possible to start taking photos.
And in other cases, it makes absolutely no sense. If you start to fly with a drone, it's not the best idea to get the Mavic 4 Pro for almost 5,000 or so, or 2,500, whatever combo you buy, and then fly with it and crash it in the next tree because you have no experience with it, or you lost it because you're flying in the wrong direction and the wind was pushing it out further on the ocean. If you start with something that's expensive, you can still keep going, even if you make a mistake with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, drones are one thing too, where, one mistake can literally cost you the entire drone. At least with cameras, you're a little bit safer in that sense, but you're right. I mean, with a drone, you got to really know that you want that drone. So don't buy a Mavic 4 Pro until you feel like you're ready for it.
If we think about gear, what is the piece of gear you would buy again right away, and what piece of gear would you say, oh, I have it, but I don't use it at all?
Yeah, okay.
And I spent a lot of money on it.
So I think the piece of gear that I probably wouldn't buy again so many times is all of my filters that I have on for my lenses. Like, this is just something where I went down a rabbit hole once where I wanted to get all the different kinds of filters, the star filter, like just like certain things that are like so specific to a look. And I used it maybe once or twice, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of over it now. And then I've gotten to a point too where like it's great to kind of have these filters, but then it affects your final image where you're kind of stuck with what that filter gave you, versus, at least for me, I can achieve almost the same results in Photoshop, etc. if I really want to have that star pop and that type of thing. So I've got probably about 8 or 9 filters, and if you talk about $100 piece, like I spent probably over $1,000 on filters that I don't use ever. A piece of gear that I'll probably buy again and again for sure is probably something like my Canon my Canon 5D Mark III. The Canon 5D Mark III is a beautiful camera, and I learned so much on that camera. And there's something about that camera too, because it's not a mirrorless camera. I picked it up the other day because I was cleaning out my office, and I just turned it back on and I was fiddling with it. The feeling of that camera just feels so much better, I think, than my Canon R5. I don't know what it was when they built those things back in the day, but it's so much more satisfying. The shutter, even just like feeling how the shutter works, the mechanical shutter on it, it's a beautiful piece of equipment. And I think anyone that wants to learn photography, buy a camera like that, because it's not mirrorless. It doesn't have the fanciest autofocus modes, etc., but it will teach you the basics really fast on how to use the camera, and like how to understand your aperture versus your shutter versus your ISO, like all of those pieces kind of working hand in hand together. How about you, Ronald? What's the piece of gear that like you probably wouldn't buy again?
I think that's more on the grip side, so
okay.
Tools for filming, which you just use for one project and never again. So I think I spent a lot of money on that side, and there's a lot of things lying around which I don't use that often, or really just for one project, and then that's it.
Yeah. Probably another one for me is like lighting. I've got all these different LED lights. I have ring lights. I have flashes. I don't need that many things, honestly. I think I've got just a collection of them for the sake of having it, but I probably have too much of it at this point. And tripods as well. I've got 5 tripods, and when am I ever traveling around with 5 tripods?
Can I ask you about editing? I guess both of you are using Lightroom.
Hmm.
And how important for you, Chris, will be editing just to convey the emotions that you felt when you were shooting outdoors?
For sure. And this can be an interesting subject for a lot of people. Some photographers swear by minimal edits. Other photographers love the editing process because it really, turns image from something to something you envision in your mind. For me, I absolutely love the editing process. I actually find it a really key piece of my entire workflow. Taking the image is one thing. Starting out with a great base image is extremely important, but I find editing for me is where the real emotion, I can pull it out even further. And I almost kind of equate it to, it's almost like a painter painting an image almost. I start with a beautiful base image and I try to edit it to an extent. There's a limit to edit, of course. You can get to a point where it's not even the same image anymore, like when you start to Photoshop things in, etc., and really just changing the dynamic of it. But I think Lightroom helps you tell the story specific in a way that you want. So, for example, with masking, you can make that subject pop a little bit more. You can darken and change the other layers to make sure that the viewer's eye is going to exactly where you want it to be. For me, I think that's part of the fun of it. To be honest with you, it's very relaxing for me. I love that process. I love it just as much as shooting it.
Chris, do you think that also depends on for whom you're shooting? So for the client or the audience, how much editing is okay for what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always going to be that for sure. Especially in like my portrait work. Portrait work is where I'm a little bit more careful in the amount of edits that I do because, it gets to a point where it's not even the same person that you're kind of capturing there too. So I think that it kind of, you have to find the right balance. I can go far off. Like I've had some clients where they're all for me kind of like creating an image in my vision, etc., and I can kind of like tailor it to the way that I see in my mind. And then there's other ones where I want to keep it a little bit more natural to make sure that the person is comfortable with it. So you're right. I mean, it's down to, when you're talking about actual client work, it's very different from just my own personal art exploration, let's say.
And if we go a little bit further in this idea, so when a client comes to you, is he coming to you just for the photography, but also for your style? And how do you deal with that thing between, like, people are coming, they have seen your style before, then you do it like, what is your style? But they complain about it because whatever they have in their mind doesn't match. How do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, I feel like this is a struggle with a lot of photographers. Like, for example, I've had people DM me on Instagram. Like, if you look at my Instagram, I'm clearly a travel photographer, and I try to I focus more on like the artistic side of things a little bit. And I'll have people DMing me, asking me, "Oh, am I in town? Is this like, can you come and just take some family photos of me like for Christmas in front of the Christmas tree?" And I'm like, wait, like, what makes like, this is not what I do. You know what I mean? I think that's first and foremost. And I have to be really clear with people and what the expectation is as well. I had another person come to me recently and ask me, "Hey, can you shoot a bunch of corporate headshots for us?" Like headshots. And I'm like, I don't do corporate headshots. Like, that's like, if you're talking about like very stark, plain LinkedIn corporate headshots, that is not what I do. And I'm clear and kind of upfront with it. So I'll only take gigs and jobs where I feel like they're actually coming to me for my specific artistic twist on what I shoot. It's my specific style. It's also for my own portfolio as well, really to build out and really to show that like, this is what I do and I don't do the other. Like, fortunately for me, like, photography is not my full-time job either. So that's like important for me, where I'm only taking on work that makes sense for me to develop myself personally as well. I would say, like obviously it's a beautiful type of career to go after, but for me it's I balance a little bit in terms of my artistic side versus just what a client or somebody is looking for, because you can find anyone to shoot a headshot. You don't need me to shoot headshots for you, for example.
Absolutely. And also working as a brand marketing director for Bacardi, do you think that having your overview of such a important brand also influences how you are shooting for other brands?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, and it's funny because like in my day job at Bacardi, yes, I'm usually the one working with agencies who are hiring influencers and content creators. So I know very much the dance of balancing brand needs and messaging versus trying to keep somebody's content more familiar and organic to what their feed is as well, and try not to give them too much art direction. So I understand the balance there. And I probably come from a different perspective. There's a lot of other brand leaders out there that might not focus on that as much, because in their minds, what's the most important thing is to get your brand messaging across. But I find, at least for me, when I speak to brands, I speak the same language as them, essentially. I know what they're looking for. And I find I'm able to help strike a right balance between what I create versus what they need. I know they want to get their brand messaging across, and I'll make sure I focus on that 100% to get that across, but it needs to be in a way that I'm feeling comfortable, where it's not feeling like it's being overemphasized in my work and sort of taking it over. So I think that they've appreciated that. And I know that that's not the case with a lot of photographers out there. A lot of photographers don't really understand this type of business either, influencer marketing, content marketing. And I feel like that's actually given me a huge benefit in a sense, and being able to kind of tackle it.
Like, you wear the shoes of a marketing director. But I think, as you mentioned, many photographers, they are thinking about their art. So if they have a brand reaching out to them, asking for a product photo shoot, or to help them promote their product or service, I will say that most of them at the beginning will struggle to convey the message that maybe the marketing director wanted to achieve through the collaboration. Do you think that it will be a good strategy for photographers also to learn about branding and marketing, and to really make that part of their bucket of knowledge?
I'm really glad that you asked this question, and it really comes down to, what is your goal as a photographer, right? It is, are you in it to just create art because you are passionate about it, and that is it? You just love it. Like, for example, people just have hobbies and passions. Some people like to do a puzzle. They just put together puzzles because it stimulates their mind, and like it's just like an outlet for them. They're not necessarily sharing their finished puzzle work with other people. It's a personal experience for them. If that's what photography is for you, then I think then you don't need to worry as much about it. If you're talking about, and sorry, Alejandro, can you repeat the question again, just so that I understand it?
So I feel like, especially for people that are doing social media, obviously, as you were explaining, you can have a goal as a photographer, and that can be to sell prints. So you want to create beautiful art, and you don't want to collaborate with brands, for example. However, I feel like there are so many opportunities nowadays for photographers, especially with social media, to have like different revenue streams, that not considering it, in my opinion, would not be wise. So if they are gonna also consider using their following to also kind of land these gigs, I feel like knowing a little bit about marketing, branding, not only to land these gigs, but also to kind of be able to convey the message that the marketing director of a different brand wants to share, will be like something really important,
For sure.
in my opinion.
Yeah, so and thank you for that. So starting over on that, so I think it really depends on what your goal is as a photographer, right? If you're in it just for sharing your art, by all means, like you don't need to worry too much about branding, marketing. like that example I gave you of somebody that's just has a hobby of putting puzzles together. It's to them, it's a personal experience. Like they just like have a passion for putting together puzzles. They're not showing their work of finished puzzles to other people. If that's your goal, then you don't really need to worry about the marketing and branding piece of it. I think we do live in a world now, though, where if you want to be a successful marketer, or if you want to be a successful photographer, and you want to build a business out of it, you do need to have general knowledge of branding, marketing, etc., because that's how you're going to build your business out. We are in a world that is controlled by social media, and we're actually fortunate because we are given platforms to be able to share our work and have anybody see it. Back in the day when social media didn't exist, these famous photographers really had to be discovered by somebody and really had to go out of their way to have their work shown. Now you can show your work very, very easily, but you need to know how to essentially play the game and understand it. And, like I think coming from my perspective, and maybe one of the reasons why I was able to build my channel up so quickly in 2 years was because I focused on the branding aspect of it. That's what I do as my day job, and I made sure I kind of employed that in everything that I put into my work as well. The quality of it, for example, making sure that my work is recognizable to me and ownable to me. Like I hope that when people see my work, they're like, yeah, that's a piece that Chris Ha definitely created. Like that's the piece that I think is really important, and you need to understand that. And that even comes down to, that's just the branding side of it. Then there's the whole marketing piece of it, and understanding the dynamics of social media and how to get your work seen is just, it's a full-on learning experience on its own. Understanding the Instagram algorithm, understanding the types of content you need to be creating. It's tough now on social media as a photographer, because video and reels is really where the content lies, or is the content that gets pushed the most. I think, like Ronald, you do reels super well with your drone work, and I feel like that's the stuff that probably resonates the most with your with your audience. Like I think it's, or at least that's the stuff that Instagram pushes out the most and gets you most like it gets you the ability to be discovered, I think, is what it is. So I think, like, in the end, it's important for anyone that wants to be a photographer as a career to really do have that understanding of branding and marketing.
Maybe I would have agreed 2 or 3 months ago. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally in line with that. But I think game has changed again. So I think also with just pure photography, you have again the option also to grow way faster than before. So like in the old days where people said, photography was really good and video took it all over and reels were the way to go. I think that's not true anymore. I think you could be successful with both, so with photos and with reels. You don't need to do both anymore, because I think that has to do with the overall new kind of strategy Instagram is having. And there it doesn't fit anymore just to push video. So they don't want to be a copy of TikTok anymore. I think that's not their goal anymore. And I think that was the reason why they pushed reels so much. And even with photography, you can get enormous amount of reach and awareness nowadays, and even an enormous amount of shares and interaction with your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think yes, maybe 3 months ago, totally agree. Now I would say don't give up too early with photography. If that's your thing, keep doing it, and it will be seen.
Yeah, you got a good point there. Like, I did notice that like carousels are now really being pushed out further in the algorithm now, for example. So you can actually share imagery, and it shows up on like the Reels tab, where you're kind of like scrolling through Reels, and carousels will start to show up. So I think there is like, I'm glad that Instagram is maybe realizing that they want to change and not be a carbon copy of TikTok. I think that's just something that is important. What I think is really important is that there is so much influence one company can have over the type of content people end up creating. You have all these people that all of a sudden invested in a bunch of video gear because all of a sudden this one company decided that video is important. And then all of a sudden now they're like, oh, now actually, you know what, like photos are coming back, etc. So maybe you don't need to focus on that as much. And it's literally changing everybody's content strategy on a daily basis. Like you just said, like 3 months ago it was reels, and now it's like, oh, kind of carousels, and now it's like, what's next gonna happen? You know what I mean? So I think it's gonna constantly evolve. It's not just the apps that are evolving; it's the piece of content that you're really consuming it off of right now, right? Like, like just recently, I don't know if you guys noticed, like there was this trend going around now of like people posting these like thin like 5120 by 1080 videos, and like it's almost like people are like like just trying to go against what Instagram normally is kind of giving you. And maybe it'll push content in a different way. Like, right now we're consuming on a phone, and really showing a little strip like that doesn't really make sense. But in the future, if we're wearing like Meta glasses and we're seeing things differently, maybe that is actually the way that we will be shooting content in the future. Right now, I do hold my camera vertically probably a little bit more than I want to. But just knowing that like at some point I'm going to share it on Instagram. Maybe in the future I'll be more horizontal shooting things, because technology, apps, content, the way people consume content is going to change. I think you got to be, and once again, this kind of comes down to being flexible as a photographer. If your goal is to just create art for the sake of creating art, you probably don't need to worry about that as much. If your goal is to grow a career and a business as a photographer, you need to constantly following what these apps and what technology is doing, so that you can create the content that's needed for it.
Yeah, but maybe you should think about that you're not only a content creator for a certain kind of platform. Maybe you create that content for more than just that one thing. Maybe you think about different income streams, not only the one. And maybe also things you have not in mind yet, but in the future could be showing up, and it would be like a pity thing if you haven't shot a scenery in horizontal, but the new thing is horizontal and all your work is just vertical. I think you have to be flexible and open to whatever you do, and not to be focused too much on that one thing, because that one thing could change. What could happen if you're a creator for TikTok, and the thing which was for a few months there, that TikTok will not be available in the US, for example, anymore. And you just create for that one platform. Instagram is changing whatever, and your content is not showing up anymore. Your whole career shouldn't be based on just one thing. You should think about that it should be more than that. And if you're good with it, and if you're a good creator, you should think about more ways to share, to show, to explore ways to, and if you're interested in that, and earn money with it, then just on the focus one thing, because this could change. And for sure, if not today, it will change in the future. And we have seen all those platforms coming and going. And maybe we now have some more consistent platforms there, which will be there in the future. And if we go 10 years ahead, there may most likely be a kind of Instagram. But if the Instagram you as an artist or as a photographer will still be confident with, is another question. Maybe you need another way to share your work in the future. So therefore you should be open for whatever is coming, and your work shouldn't be focused on just that one thing someone is forcing you to do at the moment. Because this also will keep you in like a cage where you don't go out of it, like the vertical thing, just the cage of framing everything vertical. No, our world is not vertical. We have more to show and see.
So Ronald, how do you balance that, knowing that, what your primary platforms for sharing your work though is probably, is it Instagram? Is where like you share your work primarily?
Yeah, but for me it's different between my main income stream and my main sharing platform. So many people see me on Instagram, but the money I earn is not Instagram. The money I earn is with my footage, and my footage is going to many productions worldwide, especially the video things. And most cinemas, most TV sets are still horizontal, like our eyes are. So I would say like 95% of my content I shoot, especially by drone, is horizontal, and it's cropped to vertical to show it on social media. And now that the drones have the option to also fly in vertical, if I have the time and the light is long enough there, I fly twice for vertical and horizontal results. But if I have just the one option, I will always go horizontal, keeping in mind that I maybe crop something out of it, so with guidelines or something like that on screen. But my result or idea is always something I could sell. And even if I think about pictures, most people and most rooms have better the option to have something in horizontal printed out and hang up on the wall. And there are some options also for vertical shots, but I think the largest formats which will bring you more income are in the horizontal world. And if you just focus on vertical, you miss an option to earn.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. And I think it's, so Ronald, you're living the dream. Like, you are doing this full time, and like you've found an income stream that works really, really well for you. I think for at least the way that I've approached it, and like it's like I want to protect my righteousness as an artist first and foremost, and fine art photography, but at the same time, I don't have the time to really, I don't see myself, for example, as like being able to do what you do, just because I have a full-time job doing something else entirely. So for me, in my sense, I'm like, what is the fastest way that I can create an income stream that makes sense around my own schedule? And it is content creation. So for me, that's the world I live in. I'm a marketer, so I know the world of content creation, and I know how influencers and how that business model works. And that's the one that I focused on. So I think for me, and that was just a personal choice, and once again, it comes down to what's your goal as a photographer? Do you want to be like Ronald and doing these amazing pieces of work and selling your work out and like for broadcast, for example? Or do you see yourself like, are you doing this part-time and you're just trying to find a different income stream? What's the best way of doing it? And for me, because I understood how content creation works, I was like, I could see myself as a reputable photographer that is very good at content creation, because that's just my expertise, So I think it totally depends. And I think there's like no right or wrong answer into it. And it's tough for me though. I'll tell you, like, it's like, I don't like it. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were flying a drone around, and he was just like, yeah, I don't film in vertical ever anymore because it was making me unhappy. And I'm like, you're right. Like that makes me unhappy too. Like, at least when I film with my drone, it's always in a horizontal setting, and then I'll crop where necessary. But it's tough because I am always thinking about like I'm filming horizontal, but will it show up okay on a vertical screen? Because I'm using my time right now. Like, this has to go on social for content, or like it's like for me, I just don't have time to look at other avenues.
That is so interesting from both sides to hear. And I also wanted to ask you, Chris, because you have been able to grow a lot with your reels lately. Some of them have been going viral. Is that an idea that you have been working for a few months, and then you have found the right formula?
Yep. So for me, and it was down to, once again, I was like, how can I build my audience to create like a viable business out of this as a content creator? And for me, it was, okay, so I need to build content that has value for people. And that's the only way that they're going to follow me. And for a while, I was trying to figure out what that could be. Like, I had a few hits early on where it was just like, I was just sharing like a beautiful photo or whatever, or how I took a beautiful photo on a reel and then posting the photo, and some of those went viral. But it wasn't consistent by any means, and I needed to find something a little bit better. So what I found was the best way I can offer value for somebody is to show them how I shot it and then how I edited it. And those are the reels that are doing really, really well for me right now, as I found sort of a niche where people like to see the process behind how things are created. And once I found a formula that worked, I just started to repeat it as well. And for me as well, it's a time-saving effort too. I don't have all the time in the world, especially now with a baby, to go out and shoot every day. Ronald, I would love it if I was being able to travel. Like, it's the dream for me to be able to travel around and just be able to shoot beautiful imagery every single day. But I don't have that luxury. So what I've done was I've got an amazing archive of photos. I've taken thousands and thousands of photos over all of my travels, and now I'm kind of going through them and creating reels about how I edit one image at a time. And that's been working really well for me. And I think people do resonate with that really well. So I mean, like, that's just, for me personally, that's what has worked. But I think for others, it could totally depend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In a way, I feel like the reels that you create, they can provide value, but they are also really visually engaging, which I think is also part of what Ronald is doing with his work. Is really visually engaging. So yeah, I'm always thinking about these things, and because I think people that join Instagram or are just scrolling through Instagram, they just want to see cool things, and sometimes I wonder if they actually take the time to read and to really sit with a post and consume it. But I guess some people do, because they save it. For instance, it can be a recipe for a cooking recipe. And I know, for instance, my girlfriend, she will save these ones and actually use them. So in a similar way, you can also share a recipe of how you produce a reel, an image, how you edit, and people can also save it and maybe watch it later. So I think it makes sense too, right? Like that what you are sharing is working, and in this case is reels, but you are sharing photography within a reel, which is really cool to watch. So I think both of you found like your own thing that works, and I think Ronald has been doing this consistently for many years now, and he has been able to grow to 1.3 million followers. So yeah, I also wonder if for someone that is starting, kind of finding that piece of content, that style that is really, that people can identify them on the one hand, and on the second hand that it really works. I think that's the key in a way. And I see so many photographers just sharing amazing photos, but for whatever reason, the algorithm is not picking the images, and they ask about how it's possible just to grow on social media. So maybe one tip will be to try to create something that is really unique, something where only they are the ones doing that specifically, in that style, with that color, with that music, and just try and see which reels perform better, which images, carousels, what kind of storytelling is resonating the most with the community. And then if they find something that is working better than the average, maybe just try to keep going in that direction and try to tweak it and see what happens, because again, social media in my perspective is more like a marketing tool, and then your art can live on your website horizontally, where people can consume it in a different way. So yeah.
No, I think that's a really good way of putting it, Alejandro. It's interesting. It's let me think about that for a second. I lost my train of thought.
No worries. We can jump into another question. Can we ask you something about branding? Like, what tips could we give photographers that are looking to land their first gigs so they can present themselves better, whether that is through the website or directly reaching out to a brand?
Yeah. It's really interesting, because I kind of went through this, and it was actually when I first became a concert photographer, or I wanted to call myself a concert photographer, I kind of went through the same thing. I was like, how are people going to hire me to take photos at a concert if I don't have any photos at a concert, or like I currently am not being invited to? So I can't even build my portfolio up in the first place. It's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg type of situation. And that's where I wanted to make sure that, it's not a proper term, but a lot of people say, like, fake it till you make it type of thing. Present yourself the way that you want to be perceived. is I think is going to be really important for anyone. So you even talk about like in a job interview, right? Like you dress for the job that you want type of thing. And I think it's really important that as a beginning content creator, you do the same, is that you portray yourself in the way that you want to be perceived. So I think, once again, that authenticity and that quality piece comes through really strongly, right? You want to make sure that your quality is up to the standard of where you think somebody is willing to pay a certain amount of dollars for that content, right? And it comes down to, yes, it's perfecting your craft over time to making sure that you can get there. I think that's going to be really important, at least for specific niches. Like as a photographer, you probably want, yes, your photography to be at a certain quality level, right? It maybe it's not as important if you're like a, like a different kind of content creator where you're less about, like the quality of your images and things like that. And it's more about your opinions and personalities, etc. Then it's totally different. So I'm just speaking about being a photographer specifically. I think it's like you got to really make sure that your quality really shows, and then have your basics down, right? Yeah, your website, like have like a good website, a good way of reaching you. You need like a lot of those basic things. Like the amount of people that I talk to that are like, oh, like I'm trying to be a photographer. I'm like, cool, like show me your portfolio. Where's your website? And they'll be like, I don't have one. Be like, these are like probably the more basic things. I'm like, get a website going. You know what I mean? Like you need to have like some of the basic pieces of what you think a professional content creator or photographer would have.
So in the end, it's like just putting yourself in the shoes of the people that you're reaching, and try to see through the eyes of this person and look at your work, at how you present your brand online, no?
Yeah.
And then if you truly think that it's good, that it's professional, then yeah, why not reaching out to brands and see what gigs you can land?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Lastly, from my side, what is one question you wish more people would ask photographers, but they never do?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like one question I think is probably it's down to, so the question I get the most is like when I take a photo, it's like, oh, what camera did you use and what settings did you use out of it? I wish actually they would ask me more of what feeling are you trying to have people take away from your images? It's very rare I actually get that question. Like I wish people would kind of like come up to me and be like, oh, like what were you trying to convey out of this? Tell me the story behind this image, versus like, oh, like what are the settings that you kind of used it within this? Like I think that's just really interesting, and I wish like people would ask that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chris,
for sure.
For your time. As mentioned many times during this conversation, I personally feel always like we could be talking more.
Yeah.
And we did a live interview on Instagram, and this is our first podcast together with Ronald. So from my side, I wanted to thank you for your time and the knowledge that you have shared with us. And for sure we will be keeping an eye on what you're sharing, and I feel like this is just the start of like something really cool that we are all part of. So thank you.
And thanks so much. Like I'm honored to be part of your first podcast, and like Alejandro, like I kind of mentioned to you, like it's been a pleasure working with you, and I love what Nomadict is doing on a daily, just kind of like giving a voice to other photographers and kind of showing their work, and even going down to how you edit photos, etc. Like just kind of going into the nitty gritty about like how to, like what are the details, and like how do you nerd out a little bit more on the photography side of things, I think is really cool. And Ronald, it's been an honor kind of talking to you. I've followed you for a long time, and once I think I told you at the beginning here is like you're the reason why I wanted to buy a drone in the first place. I was like, damn, like this type of content is really cool, and I wish I could like capture more stuff like this. So it was really cool just being able to have a conversation, and then just seeing things from your point of view as well, because you just come from a very different background than me, and kind of how you approach your craft, I think is really interesting.
But I think that's really the main point why these talks are so interesting, that we all have different backgrounds, and those backgrounds combined give kind of new picture and experience to everyone, and hopefully for the future.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, very
Well,
nice to meet you.
thank you so much, guys. Take care.